Alright, this is my first video, so bear with me for the poor filmmaker qualities. Really, I just want to get information across. The video probably won't be very good, and that's okay. I'm filming this on the jankiest setup ever. So, if I have a hard time getting something in frame, if I'm trying to show something and it looks bad, that's why. Now, this is the LA Police Gear. They are a retailer of like basic, you could say outdoor stuff, but it's sort of just, you know, outdoor tactical stuff, that sort of stuff. I have very little experience with their website. I just heard about this knife through the knife community on YouTube, and so I wanted to try it because they sell it as an s35vn blade for like right around $50. It's advertised at like 40 something. After tax and shipping, it's about 50, or at least that's what I paid in mid of 2023. So I've been using this knife on and off at work for a while. My job requires me to use a knife pretty often, and what I need from a knife personally is a good slicer that's easy to use one-handed, and I have to open and close it very often at work, so it needs to be easy to open and close. So like slip joints and things like that, I typically don't use at work just because it's not very easy. I also have to use them in various different grips. I actually use my knife upside down like this a lot, cutting upwards, which is kind of strange, but you know, that's just how I have to use it at work. And then I often use it in like a pinch grip, sort of like this, or sometimes even up like this, slicing downwards through clear wrap around pallets. I've used this knife a decent amount, and I feel like the amount that I've used it for how much it's worn, we'll say, I feel like I'm pretty confident in my ability to review it, and I've also done a decent bit of research and watched a lot of other people's videos on it. So I feel like I have enough that I can say about it to make a full review, and you'll see why later. So with that out of the way, they redesigned this knife for tip-up carry, so like that in the pocket, if that way is up. This is one of the new ones that is for tip-up carry. This one is the satin blade. You have the choice of the satin or it's a black wash, but it might just be a coating, I'm not sure. On their website, you can choose whichever one you want. I paid $50 after tax and shipping for this knife in mid of 2023. I remember the shipping being somewhat decent, or at least if it was bad, I don't remember that. The packaging is decent. This is the box that came in. It's just this. I like this blue and black box. It has just some basic info on the back, the name of the knife. TBFK, the name of the knife, stands for the best fucking knife, which it definitely isn't. I'll spoil the video now and tell you that. It's not the best knife. It's not even remotely close. Yeah, but it's a slide-out box. So, obviously, it just sits in there like that. Like I said, I'm filming this in a pretty janky setup. The camera is actually overhead of my hands, and it's kind of hard for me to see the screen, so like I said, just bear with it. You know, it's more about the knife than about whether or not I can make a good video. All I know is, using knives and quality and stuff. I would say I know a decent amount about knives at this point. So, other people online, on YouTube even, have chemically tested the blade, and it is actual s35vn, which, for the price that it sells for, you wouldn't think that it would be. And it's made in China, obviously, even though it's supposedly a USA company. But in the hardness testing that other people have done, it's a very, very soft for s35vn. And so it might as well not even be s35vn if you're not heat treating it correctly. And the heat treat is very important to a knife and how it handles with toughness or edge retention, things like that. I would say that the edge retention on mine has been pretty decent. It had a good factory edge on it when I got it, and it's held up pretty well. I haven't had to resharpen it, even though I've used it quite a bit. but I have had to hone it with a ceramic rod and a strop fairly often. But I would say compared to all the S30V, which I've used quite a bit, it's at least as good as S30V. So mine actually may be heat treated correctly, or maybe I've had bad S30V in the past. One of those two. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but it feels pretty decent. So it's at least not super soft heat treat. And I've never had any experience with S35vn before, so I can't really compare it to any. The blade is really slicey for a saber grind, meaning it's not a full flat grind all the way from the top. It's flat here, and then it tapers from there. But it's a wide blade, so it has a decent amount of distance to taper. So it's fairly thin behind the edge, and it slices pretty well. I need a really slicey blade for my job, and I thought it did very well. And it has the nice satin blade, and it sliced pretty well, actually. The satin, I think, definitely helps to make a nice slicey. So I'm going over notes just because I want to get all my information across so that, you know, I do a decent review. Now, I would say everything other than the blade is mediocre to poor quality at best, unfortunately. The first thing that I had issues with on this knife was the thumb studs. They are oversized. This one is what the thumb studs originally look like. They are very big, which is a good thing on the side that you actually use. You can use the thumb studs are nice and usable on this knife. I definitely had no issues with it. The blade was centered when I got it. I don't know if I said that. It's not now, but I have messed with the pivot a little bit, and I'll get into that later. But in my pocket, the right side is so big that it would catch on the hem of my pants, and it would like slightly open it just like that. It would break the detent, and if you don't notice that, you know, that can be pretty dangerous. So I actually ground, because I already could tell, you know, this knife was not going to be my perfect EDC that I cared a lot about. So I actually ground down the right hand thumb stud a decent amount, and it fixed that issue where it wasn't catching on the hem of my pants anymore. When I did that, I accidentally got into the scale right here a little bit. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera very well, but it actually held up well for getting ground on with a ceramic wheel. So I would say the scales are good G10. That should actually be brand name G10. It feels like that anyways. So, you know, good there. And it's got full steel liners. They're not skeletonized at all. So the handle feels pretty tough at least, which is good. Although it is a little bit heavy. I don't have a scale. Me personally, I don't really care whenever reviewers weigh a knife because I don't have a great feel for like weight based on a number, you know, in ounces anyways, you know, on a knife. But it's not that heavy for a knife. I will say that. The next issue that I had is that it really quickly developed rock lock. I don't think you'll be able to hear it because I'm recording this on a phone, but the blade wiggles front to back pretty bad. So it definitely isn't locked up well, which is dangerous, you know, because if it fails, it can close on your hand. Like I said, I use it in all sorts of different grips, so it's not, you know, I'm not always cutting, or all the pressure isn't always going backwards, you know, that way. Not that I pry with my knives, I try not to, but, you know, I am that type of guy where I do what I have to do to get the job done. With a knife that was only $50, you know, I would pry with it. This one I haven't, but carefully anyways. The rock lock is pretty much a deal breaker for me if it doesn't go away, because I really don't want to almost lose a finger. You know, I've been cut pretty bad by knives using them my entire life, and I don't like getting cut by knives. Since it had the rock lock anyways, I decided to spine whack test it, and it pretty consistently fails the spine whack. I guess I could do it here. I don't know if it will here, but I usually use a hard back of another knife that I have, a big like Bowie knife. Well, yeah, as you can see, I mean, that very easily failed. I mean, it sounds probably pretty loud because this room is fairly empty, but it really isn't that much force, and it pretty much always fails it. And that, like I said, that's pretty much, and it already had the rock lock before I started spine whack testing it. So I would say that's pretty much a deal breaker. So I would say the liner lock, the lockup, definitely there's something not right about it. I'm not sure exactly what. It does look very early, the lockup. So that could be it. The detent is very light, like very, very light, but it's not always an issue. I don't usually have a problem deploying it. Every now and again I get that where I'll sort of fail it, especially like if it's up, like if the knife is trying to open straight up and down. The pocket clip is very thin, probably not very well heat treated. It should be spring steel, I imagine. And the clip is very important on an EDC knife, so it being very weak is pretty much unacceptable. I would replace it, if it had a standard screw pattern, but I don't know if any other clips would fit that. You can tell just by looking at it, that it's a cheap clip. It's pretty long and not very tough. You can actually hear that it has a gap between the end of the clip and the knife, and that just shows you that it really has no tension on it whatsoever. It does have tension, I shouldn't say whatsoever, but it has very low tension, so not super secure in the pocket. I haven't gotten it snagged on anything. I have a few other knives that that I'm gonna have reviews on later where the pocket clip has bent all the way out. I have to walk past things that are pretty grabby at work, and I need a good stiff pocket clip that won't bend, ridiculously far out. And these really thin ones, especially with these sections here, it just makes it to where they're just so weak. The hardware is T6 here, and for the pocket clip, which is too small in my opinion. Those strip incredibly easy. If you have cheap bits, they'll strip really easy. The pivot is T10, which is pretty good. I like T10. If at least a T8 should be the minimum on knives in my opinion. Me personally, that's just how I feel. The jimping on the flipper is good. The action is good. Sometimes, I should say that. Every now and again, I'll put this knife away, and when I pull it back out, the action will suddenly be super gritty, like it'll barely open. It was actually like that when I got it out for the review, and I used just some basic like gun oil. I have a lot of this stuff laying around. I put that in the bearings. It is on bearings. I think it looks like it's on bearings. It definitely has that side-to-side blade play like it's on bearings, and it actually has really bad side-to-side blade play now, which I should have said earlier. On top of having rock lock front to back, it has really bad side-to-side blade play. But I would say knives on bearings usually do have a decent amount of side-to-side blade play. This, however, is like more than what you would typically expect. So, and if I were you, I would put this video on 2x speed. That way you just get the gist of what I'm saying. I know this is going a little long for a quick knife review. I don't have any editing software or anything. I just recorded on my phone raw, and I'm going to be uploading them like that. I would say if you already bought this knife, don't worry about it. Just use the hell out of it. It is at least actually s35vn. It's fairly soft, or it can be fairly soft. Mine is decent. But when I was using it, it was decent. But the issues that I've had make it, for me, not a great knife. It seems like it's actually fairly unsafe and definitely poor quality. I was going to take it apart for this video, but as soon as I picked it up and started using it for the video, the action is good. So I guess the oil made its way into the bearings, and now they're fine. I actually thought the bearings maybe had seized up or something, but they feel all right now. Like I said, the detent's still really soft. I'm sorry if the audio is really harsh on me flicking it open and closed. That's just what knife people do, I guess. So I had my tools here. I wasn't going to take it apart, but I'm not going to now, obviously. Overall, I would say it's definitely a non-recommend for me, just because it failing the spine whack test definitely, it's not like that really matters. It's just indicative of like a poor quality and a poor lockup. I wouldn't recommend it to like my friends, so I'm not going to recommend it, to anybody who watches this video. If you still want to go out and buy one for $50, take the chance. I mean, go ahead. It's your money. But me personally, I'm just going to say it's a non-recommend, although it's a decent design. It just definitely needs better materials and better quality control.
and that would definitely fix a lot of the issues. But as it is right now, the second one, you know, the tip-up version that they came out with at least a few years ago, or maybe a year ago, I would say it's a non-recommend for me, and that's just how it is.